Hey friends, the conference yesterday, the crypto summit, was really quite a big disappointment, to be honest. At some point, there was more talk about FIFA. Yeah, that really wasn't what we would have liked to see, to be honest. It would have been nice if they had announced that the US wouldn't have to pay crypto taxes anymore, or that they would be making big purchases in the Bitcoin state reserve. But neither of those things happened. That's temporarily. In any case, it is clear that we will sell off Bitcoin if these important things are not discussed here. However, I have to say I think we're actually holding up pretty well right now. I would have thought that if these news didn't come, we would actually correct much deeper. That's not the case right now. The market is actually showing some strength right now. However, there are a few small good news. They're not overwhelming though. Good, but you can read between the lines to pick up on a few things. On one hand, Donald Trump signed the Bitcoin reserve yesterday. That's very good, but it also turned out that they only have these 200,000 Bitcoins. They said that they would only keep those that were confiscated by criminals for the time being and would not buy any more Bitcoins for the time being because, of course, they cannot simply pump tax money into them, but in a roundabout way, you could read something good into it. It looks like they might be trying to save money in other areas and then use that money to invest in Bitcoin. That would obviously be the best, and it's actually quite positive when you think about it, especially if it turns out that way. That would really be the best for the crypto market, especially then people would see that new fresh capital would actually be flowing in. We now have a website where we can simply track the US government. Here we can see how much Bitcoin they hold, or Ethereum and stuff like that. And in relation to that, they obviously hold the most Bitcoin. A specific Bitcoin value is $17 billion. It's definitely something, but it would have been nice if we could see some buy pressure from the US government right now. That would have really been the best. But okay, on one hand, they want to save on taxes right now. Then, of course, you can't spend taxpayer money on that. In this regard, it might have been a small disappointment for some. However, as I just mentioned, in the long run, what has been discussed here is still good. Just like we are now, seeing that US banks can use stablecoins and that US banks are now also allowed to hold crypto completely legal for US citizens, and that's extremely positive. It opens up a whole new set of doors for us. US banks can now also be validators for public networks. That will definitely happen, that some banks, for example, will become validators in the Ethereum network and stuff like that in the future, so that they can also have a say in this. Looking at the long term, it's very, very positive. They can now hold crypto for their customers, and they can also hold stablecoins. And it gets interesting when you can also trade cryptocurrencies through the bank here. That would be the next big step. But what came out yesterday is still very, very positive for US banks and for us, because that way we attract even more retail in. Because for retail, the best thing that can happen is for everything to go as smoothly as possible. Retail doesn't want to sign up on Binance and then copy some addresses. He wants it to be as easy as possible, and he could do that, of course, by simply using his regular bank to trade crypto. And with that, the news also came yesterday that Bank of America, one of the largest banks in the world, will be launching its own stablecoin on Ethereum in the future. That's incredibly positive, and it's really brilliant because this way every bank will gradually become active on-chain and might even release their own coins that can be traded. Just imagine a world where eventually every transaction happens over the blockchain. What do you think? What kind of impact will it have on Ethereum when billions of dollars are really locked on the chain and also traded? It's crazy, folks. It's really brilliant, and some people underestimate this huge impact. Looking at the long term, it's a massive impact. And that's also what I currently think, and I already told you that 2 or 3 days ago. In the short term, this crypto summit is being overestimated, but in the long term, it's being underestimated. That's my opinion, that's what I think about it. That was it for yesterday's event. It was okay, but it wasn't as nice as we had hoped. To be completely honest, it was definitely more of a disappointment. Of course, there was a lot of talk about it beforehand, but as I said, in the long term, things are still looking positive. What came out yesterday is positive in the long run. But the next few weeks are going to be interesting. It is said that Putin and Ukraine are ready to talk about peace. Something like that would also pump the markets again. But we actually have some pretty interesting macro data right now that has changed recently, and it's good. But there's still this thing that we have too much uncertainty right now with Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is doing that on purpose, of course. With these tariff issues with China, Canada, and so on, he obviously wants to put them under pressure to have a better bargaining position here. And the markets are still not responding well to this. That's a bit of a problem here, but in this regard, things can turn around quickly. Otherwise, we also see, for example, in Bitcoin dominance, that we are really seeing a weekly bearish divergence because we've just risen too much and are in the overheated RSI area. That's of course on the weekly chart. As a result, it would actually be more likely that we correct here. The same goes for stablecoin dominance. We see an overheating in the weekly RSI. We should then usually see every drop, and when the stablecoin dominance wanes, we get fresh capital back into the markets. In terms of total crypto market cap, we're in the oversold area. That means we're currently in a high time frame zone that shows strong resistance here. And here, according to the RSI, we should rise again because we are completely oversold right now. The same goes for the altcoins. We're also in the oversold area. Yeah, it's clear. I mean, you just have to look at the market. The altcoins don't look good right now. And we are so oversold that we should actually start to see a reversal here because we are just way too oversold. As a result, we had this reversal every time, so you can see that here as well. Here we were oversold, then we had the rise. Here we were completely oversold, and then we had the rise. Then we saw this, oversold here, then we saw this. So according to the RSI, you can already orient yourself for the long term. And actually, it looks pretty good right now, that we could slowly start to rise again, if you look at it that way. On the other hand, we also see that the M2 money supply is really picking up speed. And that's one of the most important things, friends. We need fresh capital. We need that every time. And right now we're moving in a range where the M2 money supply is really going up steeply. And Bitcoin usually takes a few weeks to react, and the altcoins follow along with it. That's why March could actually be quite interesting, especially in relation to the next Fed meeting. I think it's going to get very interesting here. What Jerome Powell will mention, what he will say here, I believe a lot will depend on that. Because what many people don't understand about this trade war with Trump is that he's likely doing this so that in the long run, he has to pay lower bond interest rates. The US still has a lot of debt, and this way, he can also lower interest rates in the long run. Because we've also seen that China has set up another 300 trillion yen package. That alone is very bullish. And that alone weakens the US dollar. They're currently fully engaged in a trade war that weakens the US dollar, and as a result, the Federal Reserve is more or less forced to implement further interest rate cuts. On truflation, we also see that US inflation is decreasing very, very significantly, according to the assumptions. And accordingly, some are expecting that we could see more than 2 interest rate cuts this year. And I think in the coming months, this entire market regarding interest rates will be recalculated because a lot is happening here, and that's also what Donald Trump wants, because Donald Trump can't go to the Fed and say, yeah, go ahead and lower the interest rates. He can't do that. That's a non-governmental organization. And accordingly, they only act based on numbers, data, and facts. And that's why Trump wants to make the markets look weaker in the short term so that in the long run, we can expect interest rate cuts, a weaker dollar, and so on. That's why in the long run, it's still positive. Yeah, I think the next few months are going to be extremely interesting. And at this point, I hope you all enjoyed it so far. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time, friends. Bye.